All right. If you can still hear me, I'm here. I've got backup batteries, solar banks charged yesterday, and this gear was built to last. I'm going to keep talking as long as I can, even if the tower drops, even if no one responds, even if I don't know who's out there anymore. My name's Drew Carter. I used to run a late-night show on KSJL in San Luis Obispo. Mostly local stuff, music, traffic updates, ghost stories. I talked to truckers pulling over on long-haul routes, kids skipping school with too much time and Wi-Fi, insomniacs calling in from Paso Robles with hot takes on football or whatever was in their heads at 3 a.m. Back then, I never thought what I was saying mattered much. Now it might be all anyone has left. This isn't a show anymore. There's no network. I'm sitting in a utility closet I soundproofed with packing blankets and weather stripping. The station went dead 3 days ago when the backup generator started overheating. I had to move the rig here and patch it through the old repeater on Cerro Alto. I've got canned food, water jugs, and a cot in the hallway. It's not glamorous, but it's broadcasting. If you're just joining, I'm going to catch you up. This isn't a hoax. This isn't a test. Something is wrong with the world. People are saying words I never thought I'd take seriously outside of a museum tour or a Discovery Channel rerun. Sauropods, theropods, megafauna. I heard a woman yesterday call in and say her neighbor got crushed by a glyptodon crossing the 405. A glyptodon. That's a South American creature like a Volkswagen-sized armadillo, extinct for at least 10,000 years. She said it just pushed its way through a chain-link fence, wandered through her yard, and flipped her neighbor's Camry. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. It started, at least for me, on Sunday, just after breakfast. I got a call from a friend down in Santa Barbara, said the zoo was evacuating. Not just a fire drill, total evacuation. Animals were spooked, some broke out of enclosures. He said he saw something flying. Huge wingspan, wrong shape for a bird. He thought it might be a drone at first until it dove straight down and yanked a pelican right out of the air over the harbor. Sounded crazy. I laughed, asked if he'd been drinking. He said no, he'd stopped that last summer, swore on his kids. By noon, social media was flooded with clips. I saw one of a creature moving across a vineyard in Napa. Long tail, neck like a crane, bigger than a horse. People argued in the comments. CGI, practical effects, promotion for a new movie. Everyone's an expert when there's a phone in their hand. But the National Weather Service issued an airspace restriction by sunset. FAA grounded commercial flights. That's when I knew it wasn't marketing. That's when I locked the studio door and called my sister in Fresno. Told her to get the kids inside, fill the bathtubs, charge everything. And now it's Thursday. Power's intermittent across most of the Central Valley. Highway Patrol has given up on managing the roads. California National Guard activated out of Camp Roberts. I heard chatter on one of the shortwave bands that the base near Lemoore was overrun with. Something big, no footage, just panic and static. Then a guy's voice yelling coordinates before the channel cut out. I'm going to keep taking calls, or playing back the ones that were recorded before the lines dropped. I've got a landline still live on a copper loop and a hand-crank satellite receiver that I rigged to a mobile booster. If you hear my voice and can call, leave a message, tell me where you are, what you've seen, what's changed. This isn't just news. This is how we learn how to live through it. All right. First call I'm going to play back came from a guy named Thomas Kim. Works maintenance at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. He left this message around 1 a.m. on Tuesday.
This is Thomas Kim. I work night shift on structural checks at the aquarium in Monterey. We've had weird activity in the tanks since Saturday night. Animals behaving erratically, but not sick. Just alert, watching the glass. The kelp forest cam shut down around midnight. I went down to check it, and that's when I heard it. Something huge thumping against the outer wall facing the bay. Sounded like a boat slamming. But when I got to the control room, the external camera showed something with a long neck, slick body, breaching toward the observation window. It looked like a mosasaur, but the size wasn't right. The body was bulkier, broader, almost like it had armor. We lost power 5 minutes later. I'm fine. I'm home now, but I haven't slept. I don't know if it's still in the water or if it's moved into the bay. Please, if anyone hears this, don't take boats out. It's not safe.
That was the first time someone said the word mosasaur on the air. I didn't even know how to spell it before this week. Now I've had 5 other calls describing similar creatures off the Pacific coast, some north toward Crescent City, others farther south near Ventura. One caller said it grabbed a sea lion off the pier. Another said it flipped a pontoon boat and vanished under the swell. I don't know if this is isolated to California. I've heard vague reports from Canada, Northern Territories mostly. Someone called in yesterday from a hunting lodge in Alberta and said caribou herds are moving east en masse, whole forests falling silent. Whatever's happening might be global. I've heard nothing reliable from the East Coast, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening, just that no one's able to talk. Let me play you another call. This one came in yesterday afternoon. A nurse named Lily, just outside Eugene, Oregon. She was calm. Too calm, almost. Her voice stuck with me. Listen to this.
My name is Lily Grant. I'm a registered nurse. I live 10 minutes outside Eugene. We saw the first one Monday evening. It came out of the woods across the street from our neighbor's place. It wasn't fast, but it was tall. Way too tall. Maybe 20 feet. Covered in feathers, dark green and rust-colored. It stood still for over 10 minutes before it started walking along the fence line. My husband got a picture. It didn't come out clear, but you can see the silhouette. Later, we found a footprint in the ditch, bigger than my torso. My neighbor called wildlife control, but no one picked up. I think it was some kind of theropod. I studied biology before I switched to nursing. I know it sounds insane, but I think it was a gallimimus or something close. It didn't attack us. It just moved through like it was looking for something.
If anyone from Oregon is listening, maybe you've seen it too. Or something else. If these things are appearing all over, we need to understand their behavior. Some might not be aggressive, some might be territorial, and some might just be passing through. I'll be broadcasting all night, if the power holds, if the batteries keep, if the air stays quiet. I'll rotate stories, news, anything I can verify. If you want music, sorry. The database went offline with the server room. I'm not here to entertain anymore. I'm here to keep the light on. I haven't heard any helicopters for almost a day now. That might not sound like much, but in this part of California, when something's wrong, you usually hear it before you see it. When the earthquakes rolled through Paso Robles last winter, I heard the medevac rotors before I got the emergency alert. When the fires hit Atascadero 2 years ago, we had fire jumpers in the air within hours. It's quiet now. Too quiet for this kind of mess. That's what worries me. There's a layer of ash on my windowsill. Nothing's on fire nearby, so I'm guessing it's drift from the burn zones up north. Maybe from Shasta or the outskirts of Redding. Some of those fires have been out of control for weeks, and I doubt anyone's still trying to contain them. If the fire crews have pulled back, if the guard's pulling focus to whatever this is, we might be past the point of managing the old problems. Earlier this afternoon, I made contact with someone out of Arizona. Not the trucker I mentioned, that'll come in a minute. This was a man named Aaron DeLance, retired sheriff's deputy, said he was patching through from a hunting camp west of Winslow. He spoke in that slow, measured way lawmen sometimes do when they've seen more than they want to explain. Not dramatic, just steady. I asked him if I could record him direct instead of taking a message, and he agreed. I'm going to play back the whole conversation, not just a clip. I think it's worth hearing the full tone of it.
Yeah, this is Aaron. Aaron DeLance. Used to be a deputy out of Maricopa County, retired 4 years ago. My wife and I live in a modular place about 6 miles off the old Route 86. Usually quiet, mostly coyotes and cattle theft. We'd been noticing tracks around the property line for a week. I figured it was a stray bull or a big cat at first. Some of the marks looked like dragging tail impressions, though, which was strange. Cougars don't drag their tails. Then, yesterday afternoon, I took a drive out to check my brother-in-law's old trailer down in the basin. He's been gone a while. Left it behind when he moved to Portland. Thought maybe some squatters had taken it. What I found instead were torn trees. Big ones. Not snapped from wind. Shredded from the ground up like they'd been chewed. And something left dung piles the size of water coolers. No way that was elk. No way that was bear. Something's walking those dry basins that shouldn't be. I didn't stick around long enough to find out what.
He said he didn't get a good look at the animal, just a brief shape moving behind mesquite, tail swaying low, knocking dust and thorn bush. He said it gave off this pressure, a presence he hadn't felt since the riot days. Like the air had weight, like he was being watched by something older than anything he could reason with. That's how he put it. Not dangerous, not evil, just old. I thanked him for the call, and he said he was going to stay put for now, but if the power failed, he and his wife would try to get north toward Flagstaff. Now here's where things start to converge. That trucker I mentioned before, he came through Flagstaff 12 hours earlier. His name was Marcus Reed. Drives a Kenworth hauling mixed dry goods out of El Paso. Usually loops west to Bakersfield and up to Modesto before turning around. Said he hadn't seen a working fuel pump in over 400 miles. Most places have already been looted or shut off from the grid. He got stuck behind a convoy of abandoned rigs just east of Belmont. Here's how he told it.
This is Marcus Reed. I was heading up I-40 westbound, middle of the night, trying to beat the heat and save fuel. I'd passed Winslow an hour before. Running light, just me and the radio. Everything felt off. Not like a storm or a blown tire, just off. Dead quiet. I figured it was just the route being empty. But then I saw brake lights up ahead. 4 rigs parked across both lanes. No hazards, no cones. I slowed down, pulled the Jake brake so I didn't slam into someone. Thought maybe it was an accident. Then I noticed the rear of the last truck. It had claw marks on it. Real ones. Deep gouges through the aluminum shell. I got out with my flashlight, walked forward a little. First rig's cab was torn open. Not crushed. Torn like something hooked it and peeled it sideways. No bodies, no blood. Just gear scattered everywhere and some kind of muddy residue leading into the trees. Then I heard it. Not breathing, not roaring, just a low vibration in the gravel, like the earth shivering. I backed up, got in my truck, and reversed for damn near a mile before I turned onto a dirt side road. I'm holed up at a tire shop now. I can't explain what I saw, just know it wasn't human. Wasn't bare, wasn't natural.
I asked him if he'd seen anything since. He said just silence, and headlights flickering behind hills that shouldn't have power. He hasn't heard from dispatch, doesn't know where to go. Said if anyone hears this who's still on the highways, avoid I-40 westbound near Belmont. That whole stretch is compromised. All right, switching gears a little. I'm going to read a message now. Came in through the landline voicemail. Guy didn't want to speak directly. Said he was afraid of triangulation, that someone was tracing calls. I'm not sure who he thinks is doing that, but I'll respect the request. He didn't leave a name. He said he's a geologist based near White Sands Missile Range. He claimed, this part's hard to verify, that there were seismic anomalies starting almost 3 weeks ago. Not tectonic, not volcanic. Shallow signatures with non-periodic pulses, almost like biological movement underground. He said their station received upward harmonics from beneath the basin floor, signals that mimicked respiration or pressure release. And then, according to him, the base went quiet. No announcement, no evac order, just stopped transmitting. That might explain some of the newer rumors coming out of New Mexico. I've had 2 separate callers report seeing enormous winged silhouettes passing over Roswell and Carlsbad. One said it was just after dusk, and the creature's outline blotted out the stars for almost 6 full seconds. The other caller described a beak like a spear, and wings that looked more like stretched bone than feathers. Sounds impossible, but I've stopped using that word this week. Let me pull something else up here. Hang on, got it. One of the last emails that came through the station before the network went down, from a teacher named Marcy Riley, works at a community college in Spokane, Washington.
My students and I were part of a field ecology group running a survey in Riverside State Park. That's west of Spokane proper. We were documenting erosion patterns near the Little Spokane River when one of the students pointed out what looked like a nest, huge tangled branches in a ravine. At first, we thought it was just storm debris. Then we saw bones inside it, large ones. A few broken in ways that looked deliberate. We backed away, but before we made it far, something flew overhead. I couldn't identify it. The body looked too large to be a bird. The flight pattern wasn't right. It made no noise. just shadow and movement. We got back to the vans. The faculty locked the park gate behind us, but I don't think it matters. That thing is still out there.
The internet is gone for most of us, but I saved local backups of older scientific databases. Most of the time, these creatures being described don't line up cleanly with any one species. They resemble parts of known prehistoric animals, pterosaurs, sauropods, ancient mammals, but not exact matches. That's either because memory distorts things or because these aren't direct resurrections. Maybe we're not dealing with a Jurassic Park scenario. Maybe this is something else entirely, something deeper. All right, I've got a few more survivor calls queued for the next segment. One's from a ferry worker out of Washington State. Another is a biologist calling from northern Manitoba. I'm still screening through the satellite inbox, but signals are patchy, so bear with me. If you're listening, don't panic, but don't dismiss what you see. If you think it's a mirage, it's not. If you think it's something from a textbook or a movie, you might be closer to the truth than you'd like. Get inland if you're coastal. Avoid major roads if you can. Most major arteries are either blocked or too exposed. Keep water. Keep batteries. Keep a flashlight by your bed. If the ground shakes or the air pressure changes suddenly, don't wait. Move. The people who hesitate are the ones who go missing. I've been broadcasting this whole time without saying what most people are waiting for. Whether the government has said anything. Whether there's a plan. Whether someone, somewhere, has come to a microphone and admitted that this is real. Not just local news panic or viral videos, but something official. A press conference, an emergency channel override, something with a seal at the top of the screen. That came this morning. It wasn't dramatic. No podium, no flag behind the speaker. It was a feed pushed out through the remaining EEAS towers across the West Coast. I caught the tail end of it through an AM spillover rebroadcasting on a Canadian trucker band. I recorded what I could. Some sections were garbled, others came through clean. The speaker was an assistant undersecretary from the Department of the Interior, not military, not CDC. Her name was Evelyn Roche. Voice calm, practiced, but you could hear it strain the longer she talked. No news ticker, no media presence, just static. Then a woman in a gray suit behind a battered desk, reading from notes that didn't look printed. They looked handwritten.
This is a confirmed federal announcement. The United States Geological Survey and several cross-agency partners have completed preliminary assessments of the biological and geophysical anomalies being reported across multiple states. The phenomena are real. The threats are not fully understood. What we are seeing is not a coordinated attack, but a breakdown in known environmental baselines. You are advised to remain in sheltered areas, avoid unknown animal encounters, and report organized herd behavior of large fauna to emergency channels when accessible. Satellite imaging has confirmed that multiple zones in the Pacific Northwest, Rocky Mountain Basin, and coastal California have experienced unexplained migrations or emergent biological clusters. These life forms do not match known contemporary species. Repeat. The United States government acknowledges the presence of anomalous fauna on American soil. Protocol 6 has been activated for non-hostile displacement of population centers. Urban sheltering will transition to rural redirection where safe. Communications are restricted. There will be no centralized relocation efforts at this time.
That was the most direct thing anyone's said, but it wasn't nearly enough. The feed cut after a few more sentences, and it hasn't come back since. I've tried scanning across bands, military, NOAA, Homeland Security repeater towers, all quiet or encrypted. No FEMA locations were listed. No military staging zones confirmed. They admitted it's happening, and then went dark again. Maybe that's all they're capable of now. Maybe the people who knew what this was aren't around to finish the sentence. This wasn't the same as a hurricane announcement or a biohazard warning. There were no maps, no zones, no color-coded threat charts. Just a voice telling us what we already knew and then falling silent again. For those asking whether this is happening outside the country, I've only got partial confirmation. A shortwave operator in Sweden said something is moving through the forest near Jokkmokk, ripping trees apart. In rural Brazil, A man emailed in a grainy video of what looked like a shadow moving through the canopy near the Tapajos River. Then the feed went black. A listener in Adelaide, Australia said roadblocks have gone up around Cooper Pedy. No explanation, no interviews, just long lines of silence and the sound of something walking in the dark. Now, about what I witnessed earlier. I said I hadn't seen anything with my own eyes yet. That's no longer true. Around 1 this afternoon, I stepped outside the station to check the antenna mast. Wind had been rough all morning, and I didn't want the secondary repeater to disconnect. I had just started tightening a guy wire when I heard something in the distance. Far off at first, but heavy. Not mechanical. Not wind. Just this slow, rhythmic thump, like a deep drum echoing through concrete. At first I thought maybe it was machinery from the quarry west of town, but then I saw birds break out of the tree line across the ridge. Hundreds. Whole flocks spiraling up and scattering in every direction. I crouched down behind the edge of the building, pulled my phone out, not because I expected a signal, just habit. I wanted to record something. Anything. But the sound came closer and then I saw it. About 100 yards down the slope, moving along the old service road that cuts through the brush. Something huge. Quadrupedal. Long neck swaying side to side, massive legs crushing dry brush beneath it. I could barely breathe. It wasn't charging, wasn't panicked. Just walking like it had somewhere to go. A few of the old wind towers in the distance creaked as it passed, but it didn't stop. Its skin looked leathery and dust-covered like dark river mud dried under the sun. I counted 3 visible wounds, gashes down one leg, a scar along its back. None were fresh. I don't think this thing just showed up. I think it's been here a while. It moved slow enough that I could follow it with binoculars for nearly 10 minutes. Eventually it disappeared behind the eastern hills. I haven't heard it since. The trees have been still all evening. I tried to describe it against what I've read, maybe some kind of sauropod, but shorter. Not a brontosaurus, too low slung. Maybe something from the Cretaceous, but I'm no paleontologist. I'm a radio guy with a scared stomach and a cracked window trying to keep his voice from shaking. I'm going to shift gears and play a call that came through an hour ago. This one was different. It came from a man who said he was inside a federal facility when this all started. I don't know how much of what he says is true. I can't verify his identity, and he refused to give any more than his name and a vague location. But it didn't feel like a hoax, not the way he told it. Listen carefully.
This is Dale. I'm not going to say what branch I worked in, just that it was a research support role, non-combat. I was assigned to a project located in eastern Nevada. Desert basin, underground facility, a lot of geothermal tech, some ecological monitoring. But around 10 months ago, we started recording seismic resonance patterns that didn't line up with tectonic activity. The lead geologist said it looked biological. I thought she was exaggerating. Then last week, 2 observation drones went offline. We sent a team out, only one came back. And he wasn't speaking anymore, just staring, pale, covered in abrasions, none of them defensive. He'd been brushed by something huge and soft, like a tail or a limb. The next morning, our internal lines were cut, comms dead. We heard something through the floor, multiple sets of movement, rhythmic, organized. We sealed the upper level and left through the emergency tunnel. I've been hiding near Ely since. I think it's spreading from deep geological pockets, places that haven't been disturbed for centuries. These aren't lab-created creatures. They're not clones. They're old. They've been here. And something let them out.
I couldn't get more out of him. He hung up shortly after and didn't pick up again. I traced his call back to a relay point in rural Nevada, but that's all I got. If what he said is true, it changes the timeline. This isn't new. It's not a breach or a flash event. These creatures, or at least some of them, might have been dormant, buried, preserved. And something disrupted that balance. Maybe geothermal drilling, maybe deep earth mining, maybe something no one expected. That would explain the lack of pattern. Why some show up in the jungle, others in arid flatlands. They're not invading. They're re-emerging. The world just wasn't ready for them. We've spent decades mapping plate shifts, studying fossils, building models to simulate extinction events. But all of that assumed we had the full picture. Now we're watching pieces of ancient biology play out across modern terrain, and none of our systems were built to handle it. Local governments are overwhelmed. Federal response is scattered. People on the ground, farmers, fire crews, backwoods EMTs, they're the only ones holding the line right now, and even they're running out of time, resources, and places to retreat. I've got another call queued up, but before I play it, I want to share something I picked up on the old VHS emergency training tapes I salvaged from the old county firehouse 2 blocks from here. It's ironic in a grim way. The manual I found was labeled Large-Scale Natural Event Triage Revision 6. Inside, there's a list of standard evacuation terms, and a section that used to be hypothetical. Event types that were statistically unlikely but non-zero probability. Under that list, subterranean biological emergence with apex predator traits. They knew, not exactly this, not the scale of it, but someone in a room full of engineers and emergency planners once sat down and decided that something like this exact kind of uncontrolled awakening, needed a paragraph in a federal response manual. They knew it could happen. And yet, here we are. Not one working siren, not one working plan. All right. This call came in earlier from coastal Georgia. Name's Morgan Paxton. He's a wildlife officer stationed near the marshland south of Savannah. He didn't give a precise location for safety reasons. I've cleaned up the audio a little, but the phone line had background noise. Wind, rustling trees, maybe insects. He was nervous. Tried to keep a professional tone, but you could tell this wasn't just another field report.
This is Officer Morgan Paxton, Georgia Department of Natural Resources. I've been posted out near the Black Hammock Wildlife Reserve for most of the past 3 years. I've dealt with alligators, wild boar, coyotes, wandering too close to property lines. Once even handled a black bear that wandered in from the Carolina border. I know how the land sounds when it's resting and when it's watching, but this isn't anything we were trained for. 2 nights ago, we lost radio contact with our Eastern patrol boat. Normally, we'd assume mechanical failure, dead battery, maybe a capsized vessel. But then yesterday, a deputy found their boat washed up, half sunk in cattails, hull peeled open down the middle, not torn from a rock, split from underneath, like a can opener had been dragged through it. There were no bodies, no blood, just strange mud, thick yellow-brown, not native to this side of the swamp. We're assuming they were taken. I patrolled the North Basin after sunup. That's when I found the nesting site. Dozens of large, scooped impressions in the river mud, big enough to hold a full-grown person curled up. Broken branches overhead, reeds flattened in a spiral, and something else, eggshell fragments, larger than softballs. I think something has laid in the open, something that doesn't belong in this century. We've put out no public warning, not because we don't want to, but because we don't have confirmation, and the higher-ups are trying to avoid a stampede of panic. But I'll say this, whatever's down here is big, intelligent, and possibly nesting close to human property lines. I'm advising residents to leave. I don't care what the chain of command says.
That's the kind of voice I trust right now. Not the ones in clean suits behind closed microphones, but the people who walk into the woods knowing they might not walk out again. And what he described, the spiral pressings, the eggshells, matches 3 other messages I've received in the past 48 hours. One from someone in the swamplands of Louisiana, another from a river delta in Mississippi. The pattern is forming, even if the authorities won't admit it yet. Something about wetland environments must be attracting or awakening these things. Maybe it's the humidity. Maybe it's the easy prey. Maybe it's because those areas are quieter, farther from seismic sensors, less paved over. Or maybe it's where they went to die all those millennia ago, and now, somehow, they're clawing their way back up through the silt. I got a shortwave report this morning from a sailor offshore near the Gulf. Claimed he saw a pair of long-necked creatures, heads above the waves, swimming slowly past his trawler at dawn. Not aggressive, not erratic. just gliding south against the current. He didn't call them dinosaurs. He just called them old. That was the word he used. Said they moved like they remembered where they were going, and the water made room for them. People are still looking for answers. One of my callers, Jacob, a retired science teacher from Iowa, has been doing side research since this started. He left a message I'll summarize here. He believes we're dealing with a deep biosphere rebound, that the global climate changes of the last 50 years, the melting of permafrost, deep drilling, ocean current shifts, all of that didn't just disrupt weather patterns. It may have destabilized biological time capsules. Some buried spores, eggs, or dormant tissue types that survived extinction events through stasis. His theory is that it wasn't just that they were preserved. They were waiting, and now they're waking up. It's one thing to hear that in a podcast or read it in a sci-fi novel. It's another thing entirely when you see it walk through a field and crush a grain silo with its hip without even slowing down. I heard that report from central Kansas yesterday. Grain elevator near Great Bend torn in half by something massive. No witnesses survived, but a passing trucker caught the aftermath. Tire marks swerving off the road, corn flattened for almost 60 yards, and an odd trail of cracked earth leading into the tree line. More and more people are starting to believe this isn't isolated, that this might be the beginning of a second extinction, only this time, we're the ones who don't belong. I don't want to believe that. I want to believe there's still a way to coexist, to find safe zones, to hold our ground, but I'm not going to lie to you. It's not looking good. Emergency bands across the country are going silent. The last working station I had regular contact with, an operator in St. Louis, hasn't responded since midnight. Same for the repeater on Mount Diablo. Too much static, too many gaps. I'll keep reading your messages, playing what I can, recording what I have. The antenna is still holding. I've reinforced the roof with sandbags and sealed the east-facing windows with metal sheeting from the fire station's garage. I've got fuel for the generator, but not forever. Eventually the sun has to come back out, or the batteries will dry out. When that happens, I'll record what I can onto tape, seal it in plastic, and bury it in the walls if I have to. Somebody needs to know what happened, even if it's not tomorrow, even if it's not this year. Next, I'm going to share something I wasn't sure I should play. It's not from a witness or a civilian. It's from a young woman stationed at a classified weather monitoring station outside Barrow, Alaska. She didn't say how she got my frequency. Her voice was clear but quiet, like she was speaking from inside a sealed hallway. You'll hear her now. Her name was Dana.
This is Dana Wilson. I'm speaking from a remote NOAA outpost about 27 miles east of Barrow. Our station tracks magnetic field shifts and atmospheric anomalies. Last month we picked up changes in the auroral bands. The data looked wrong. Rhythmic pulses that didn't match any solar activity. We thought it was equipment error. Then the magnetometers started to pick up ground vibration. Not in the Earth's crust, but in the upper layers of permafrost. I opened one of the sub-ice cores 3 days ago to take a sample, and I found tissue. Not fossilized, not petrified. Tissue. Warm to the touch. I ran it under the microscope. The cell structure was... It was functioning. I called the anchorage office. Then I heard something slam against the far wall of the outpost. Something that cracked the ice from the outside. Something that is still there.
The transmission cut right after that. I haven't heard from her since. If you're listening, Dana, if you made it out, I've got your voice here. I'll keep it alive as long as I can. This is not an extinction event in reverse. This is not a rerun of evolution. This is something new waking up in the old skin of the world, and it's here now. It's already here. You know what's strange? People have already started giving them names. Not official ones, not government assigned, not Latin taxonomy out of a lab, but names pulled from books and childhood memories. Things like stegs, sea runners, redmouths. Someone posted a sketch on a local network last night and called the thing a grave tail. Looked like a cross between a ceratosaur and a ground sloth. Heavy tail, hunched spine, skin like burnt rubber, no feathers, thick jaw. According to the Post, it was spotted west of Pueblo, Colorado, moving between broken rail lines. Person who wrote it didn't even try to speculate on species. He just wrote, "It looked at me like it recognized something," and then it kept walking. Even without official names, people are using old terms: sauropod, theropod, ornithischian, whatever they remember from museums or documentaries. It's a coping mechanism. You name something, you make it smaller. You make it part of your world. The truth is, we don't know if these things line up with any fossil record. They don't always match the skeletons. Maybe the record we had was never complete. Maybe extinction never took all of them. Or maybe whatever this is, it's something we misclassified from the beginning. Before the net went completely dead, I had access to our archive field guides and an offline database from the National Museum of Natural History. For a while, I kept cross-referencing reports with known genera, looking for connections. I started marking overlaps. Here's what I noticed. In northern Utah and parts of eastern Idaho, almost all sightings have described large herd-moving herbivores with high hip bones and long tails. Most closely resemble hadrosaurs, what folks used to call duck-billed dinosaurs. Notable features include broad snouts, social behavior, and coordinated group movement. People in that area say they saw 5 to 10 of them moving together, crossing valleys without breaking formation. More than one report mentioned what sounded like low rumbling, vocalizations, maybe communication. These weren't stampeding. They were migrating. Someone from Ogden said it reminded him of watching elk herds in winter, but bigger. He said one of them knocked over a grain silo and didn't even pause to investigate, just kept walking west. In southern Texas and northern Mexico, we've had reports of solitary predators. Most have similar profiles: bipedal, narrow chest, elongated skulls with serrated teeth. Size estimates range from 10 to 15 feet tall. Some had feathered arms or quilled shoulders. Most reports include the creature pausing to assess before striking. Never blindly aggressive, more like a trained hunter. One survivor, an ex-military tracker from Del Rio, called it a Dakota raptor. He admitted it didn't quite match what he remembered from textbooks, but it was the closest thing. He said it moved in bursts, with full control of its limbs, and never made a sound unless it wanted you to run. He shot it 4 times with a .30-06 from a rooftop and didn't even knock it down. The animal retreated, circled, and waited him out until he was out of ammo, then disappeared. Never attacked directly. People are cataloging these encounters like field researchers used to do in the age of first contact. Makeshift biology from rooftops and rural outposts. I've seen hand-drawn maps, Google Earth overlays with red pins, even hard copies of old dinosaur atlases marked up in pen. It's not scientific, but it's honest, and for now, it's all we have. I want to read something I pulled from one of the last pages that loaded before the internet went dark. It's from a subreddit that used to catalog cryptozoological sightings, mostly fake stuff, hoaxes, blurry shots of dogs with mange. But this one was different. It was titled, "Something's Moving in the Oil Fields," posted by a user claiming to be a technician working near the Permian Basin. I saved it word for word.
Last night, just after midnight, the pumps shut down across 3 sites. No warning, no malfunction reports. We checked the relay nodes. Dead. Thought maybe a software patch went bad. But then we started getting seismic fluctuations. Not earthquakes, but pulse hits. Repeating. Like footsteps. We sent out a drone. It caught part of a heat signature moving through the derrick line. Huge mass. Bipedal. No known animal signature. And then the drone feed cut out. When we drove out to the pad, we found claw marks in the dirt, 3 meters apart. There was blood, not human, not oil field animal either, dark greenish, coagulated fast, smelled metallic. Whatever this is, it's moving between pump stations, like it's tracking the vibrations.
I've gotten 3 similar reports from Oklahoma and western Kansas. Same pattern. Something is drawn to oil drilling infrastructure. Some think it's the sound. Others think it's heat. I wonder if it's memory. These creatures may be moving based on old patterns, migration lines, heat zones, seismic pockets. Some of them might not even know why. They just go. They're following instincts from a world that no longer exists. We've started treating them like they're actors in our world, but that's backward. We're the ones in their space now. Our cities, our freeways, our power grids. They're just noise to them. Interference. Some of them don't even stop to look. Others, maybe some are studying us too. I got a short call last night from someone in Vancouver. Woman named Naira. Her brother worked at the Royal BC Museum. Before everything fell apart, he had been doing private research into prehistoric DNA structures. Fringe stuff, not publicly funded. She said that 3 days before the city blackout, he received an encrypted document from a colleague in Argentina. Title was short: Lazarus Samples. The file was corrupted. But one image came through, a scanned field journal page with a sketch of a creature that looked like a tyrannosaur, but with branching spinal ridges and a stubbier snout. The note said it had been recovered from a salt pocket deep beneath an abandoned dig site. Not displayed, not catalogued. No confirmation, of course, but the journal had initials, SDB. Her brother never told her what that meant. She's been trying to access his files ever since. His apartment was ransacked yesterday. We might not have much longer to figure this out. People keep hoping the government will reestablish control, but they don't understand. This isn't just a disaster response. It's a redefinition of what the world is. The old rule book doesn't apply. Our satellites can't track half of them. Our drones get shredded if they fly too close. Infrared picks up heat signatures we don't even know how to classify. These creatures aren't just surviving. They're adapting. That brings me to another topic. The first confirmed footage of one of these things, changing behavior based on human actions, came from a ranger out of Lassen Volcanic National Park. She set up a trail cam facing an old maintenance shack, left a portable radio playing on loop to see if it would attract anything. It did. Something bipedal approached the shack, paused, turned its head toward the radio, and then moved around it, walking a half circle before disappearing into the trees. She reviewed the footage 30 minutes later. You could see the creature blink, pause, then step carefully over a steel drainage pipe without tripping. She said it looked like something that had learned what a trap was. I'll play her full message next, but for now, understand this. These aren't dumb monsters. Some of them may not have had contact with humans for millennia, maybe ever, but that doesn't mean they aren't learning fast. They see how we move, what we use, what we fear. They may not understand it yet, but give it time. I don't think we're looking at a bunch of lizards stomping around. I think we're watching the rebirth of an ecosystem that we were never part of, to begin with. And we're starting to respond the only way we know how, militarily, slowly, quietly, without press releases or clear language. But it's happening. The buildup started with reactivations of regional guard units. You could hear the hum of convoys in the early hours near state lines. Fuel tankers rerouted off interstates. Helicopters moving low over empty fields with lights off. They didn't make any official announcement because they're not treating this like a war against another country. They're treating it like an internal environmental failure, one they don't fully understand yet. No one wants to be the one who says we're fighting dinosaurs. But the gear is moving, the orders are already out. I got confirmation this morning from the contact out of Fort Hood. He didn't give his full name, just told me to call him Sergeant Allen. He was brief, professional, but what he told me was enough. A joint logistics base has been staged in west central Texas. No press, no civilian support personnel. They're moving armored units into lowland basin terrain and setting up mobile surface-to-air batteries. Not for aircraft, for something else. I asked if he could be more specific. He just said,
"We're deploying units as if we're defending a forward outpost from an unknown but mobile threat with flight potential. Patternless emergence zones. Secondary hostiles likely. Comms limited. Weapons are hot."
Then he hung up. That was 2 hours ago. I don't know how widespread the mobilization is. Most traditional channels have gone dark, or are redirecting to old civilian broadcast loops. If there's a war footing happening, it's not one they're planning to televise. I've heard rumors that some older Cold War infrastructure is being reactivated. NORAD sites pulling backup personnel, Montana missile fields going off alert status and into full operational readiness. None of it confirmed officially. Just people like me, listening, watching trucks roll past their farms, seeing airfields light up at night for the first time in years. Earlier today, I got a long message from someone stationed at an old radar facility in Nevada, former Air Force tech who stayed on as civilian support after retirement. He said the signal feeds have been acting strange, not jammed, not damaged, just inconsistent. He described what he called mid-altitude sonar distortion. That means something is moving through airspace without a clear radar profile. He said they were trained to watch for drones or stealth aircraft, but this didn't behave like any of those. No transponder, no heat bloom, just pressure waves. His words, imagine something with wings larger than a transport plane, but with the cross-section profile of a goose. No one could explain it. One of the senior officers told them to stop logging it. He said they were ordered to scrub the tapes. Now let me back up a second. That ranger from Lassen Volcanic, her name's Cassidy Brill. She left a direct voice message on one of the back channel lines I've kept alive. I told you I'd play it. Here it is.
My name's Cassidy Brill. I'm a senior ranger assigned to Region 4, Lassen Sector. I stayed behind after the evac order because the animals weren't moving right, not running, just standing. Elk, black bears, even the smaller predators. They were all retreating to the far slopes like something was coming they already knew about. I set up trail cams, left a radio playing classic rock near the maintenance shed just to see what might draw attention. Around 0200 hours, a large bipedal creature walked into frame. It didn't look lost. It didn't hesitate. It studied the shed, then skirted around the entire perimeter. No aggression, just avoidance. That's not random behavior. That's not instinct. That's recognition. We've had 3 separate incidents up here where old bunkers were crushed, not attacked, collapsed inward, like something wanted to shut them up. Wildlife is gone. We're starting to lose control of the trails. I've moved to a fire tower station. Still got solar, still got visibility. But I don't think this is going to hold forever. If you get this, broadcast it. Don't let them sanitize what's happening out here.
That message came through around dawn. I tried to reach her again at noon. No reply. I hope she's still there. I hope that tower holds. She sounded clear, steady. The kind of person who doesn't panic when the forest line starts to change shape. There's a deeper concern now. One I didn't want to speak out loud before, but I can't avoid anymore. If these creatures are adapting, recognizing patterns, avoiding obvious threats, what happens when they start resisting? Not just observing, but pushing back. What happens when a missile launch doesn't scare them? When gunfire stops being a deterrent? I spoke with a former artillery officer last week. He told me the standard high-explosive anti-tank rounds currently used by most NATO forces are effective against armor and bunkers, but biological mass like this? It absorbs shock differently. Unless you hit critical structures, eyes, joints, vital organs, you're just scarring surface tissue. He described one theoretical approach: saturation bombing followed by thermobaric compression. The problem is, you'd have to do that in populated zones. And right now, most of these things aren't in cities. They're in the hills, the forests, the deserts, the rivers. Places people thought didn't matter anymore. But we've been building in those places for a long time. I got a hand-delivered note this morning. That's how bad things are now? A kid on a mountain bike pulled up out front, tossed a folded sheet of legal paper into my supply bin, and pedaled off again without saying a word. Inside, written in pencil, it said,
I work the perimeter at Camp Glen. They're moving in mobile missile racks. Older models. We're not being told what for, but they repainted the targets on the display sims. It's not tanks anymore. It's large irregular mass. They gave us fresh NBC suits and told us not to worry about air filtration. Something's coming. The officers stopped smiling.
I don't know where Camp Glen is. Might be a forward ops base, or maybe just a code name for a site near one of the national armories. But the tone of that note felt real. And if missiles are being reprogrammed, that means someone high up believes there's no more delaying this. The first shots are coming. I have no idea if they'll work. You can't intimidate biology with posture. And if these creatures are smart, if they can coordinate, if they've already started learning from us, what happens when they adapt to our weapons? What happens when they realize we're trying to corral them? Will they scatter? Will they retreat deeper underground? Or will they decide the surface is theirs again? There are no battle maps, no front lines, just pulses in the earth and flickers on the radar. We're fighting an ancient ecology with post-digital tools. Our advantage was always data, precision, timing. But now we're up against something that doesn't run on batteries or protocols. It runs on instinct and endurance and a memory that predates our species by tens of millions of years. People are going to start seeing troop movements. Don't assume it's for evacuation. In some regions, they might be trying to lure things into kill zones. If you're near a military installation and you see unmarked transports moving west or north, stay away. Don't assume you're being protected. You might be part of the experiment. This is what it looks like when civilization adjusts to something it can't outthink. We shift to battle posture. We treat every shape in the dark like a threat. But this isn't a rogue nation or a viral outbreak. This is the planet remembering something we forgot how to live with. This is the land pushing back. The hardest thing for people to accept right now isn't the size of these creatures or the damage they cause. It's the lack of intent. These aren't invaders. They're not strategizing in war rooms or cutting cables to disrupt communications. They just exist. They move. They hunt. They sleep. They nest. The danger is that they're not malicious. They're automatic. Nature without a conscience. But once that instinct overlaps with our infrastructure, it turns violent fast. An hour ago, I got a copy of an after-action report from someone who claimed to be embedded with the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. They didn't disclose their name. They just listed coordinates. Southeast Oregon. A ridgeline above Lake Abert. The mission was to set up a forward observation post on the eastern slope to monitor thermal activity and movement patterns across the basin. It was supposed to be a no-contact op. Surveillance only. High ground advantage. They had drones, sensors, the usual perimeter security. The first sign something was wrong came when their drones started returning incomplete telemetry. Not jammed, just inconsistent. Altitude fluctuating, sudden battery drops. Onboard cams freezing for whole seconds at a time. One of the techs said it was like the air density shifted mid-flight. 5 hours later, a motion alert tripped at the tree line below their position. Nothing showed up on the optics. Then the seismic unit started spiking. Shallow tremors, rhythmic, pulses, not random shakes. Whatever was moving, it wasn't fast, but it was heavy. They described it as mass with no heat signature. The unit held position until dusk. Then they saw it. One of the scouts reported seeing a shape moving uphill. Low body, wide stance, armor like skin glinting under moonlight. No glowing eyes, no roaring. Just slow, deliberate advancement. The report said it resembled a nodosaur, which would be absurd under any other circumstance. Plate-covered back, stubby limbs, broad snout. They didn't open fire. Command said to observe only. But the thing kept advancing. It walked straight through a tripwire sensor and didn't flinch. That's when the order came through to fall back. Quietly. No lights. They didn't get the chance. Something else moved in from the north. Fast. Smaller. Two-legged. The sentries didn't get a clean look, but one described it as built like a cassowary, but longer arms and serrated claws. No feathers. Just leathery skin with stripes. It hit the outer camp hard. Silent. No vocalization. The after-action note said the only warning was a blur between trees, and then one of the Humvees was on its side. They fired 3 rounds from a Mark 19 grenade launcher and saw it vanish into the brush. Another team tried to evacuate the injured, but something had already taken the far ridge. The scout on the floor said he counted 3 heat shapes, 2 quadrupeds, 1 biped, all staying just outside of firing range. The mission was scrubbed at 0200 hours. By dawn, they had 5 casualties, 3 missing, 2 vehicles abandoned. The thing they originally came to observe was never seen again. That was 2 nights ago. The remaining personnel are being rotated out through ground transport. The ridge is being marked red on their internal systems. Unwinnable terrain. This is the kind of engagement we're going to start hearing about more often. Skirmishes, not battles. Mobile units being tested and outmaneuvered by something that doesn't follow predictable attack paths. This isn't conventional warfare. You don't plan tactics against something that doesn't care about supply lines or weather. You don't dig trenches when the thing you're facing can step over them. I spoke with someone out of Yuma last night, logistics officer assigned to resupply convoys moving east from Camp Pendleton. He said every shipment now includes specialized flares, wideband ultrasonic deterrents, and armor kits for MRAPs that are normally used for mine-resistant routes. They're not just outfitting for mobility. They're preparing for direct strikes from heavy biological mass. The term he used was impact suppression shielding. That's not language used for war zones. That's language used for animal control, on a scale we've never dealt with before. Civilian areas are already paying the price. I got a report out of western Nebraska, small town near the South Platte River. No National Guard presence. 1 road in, 1 road out. Their emergency alert system went off at 3 in the morning. No storm, no sirens, just an automated text. Please shelter, do not leave your residence. 20 minutes later, a livestock processing plant went dark. Power outage. Locals say they heard metallic creaks and glass breaking, then nothing. By morning, the facility was torn open from the southern wall. No fire, no looting, just destruction. Cattle pens were empty. Not a drop of blood. Like something knew how to move among them. Not for sport, for food. They found tracks nearby. Splayed toes, thick heel pads, each print over 2 feet wide. No claw drag. Clean strides. Whatever it was, it had full control of its weight and direction. That's not the behavior of a panicked animal. That's a controlled feeding route. If that's what we're dealing with now, coordinated feeding routes, then we're past the point of defense. We're into territory management. We're watching these creatures claim land like apex predators staking out range. And if that's the case, we need to start thinking like prey. There's a retired colonel out of Colorado Springs who's been writing internal memos for weeks, trying to get someone to listen. I got a copy of one from a friend who worked perimeter security at Peterson Air Force Base before the lockdown. It's long, technical, but I'll quote part of it here.
We must immediately reassess the concept of air dominance in light of biological incursions at mid-altitude. Traditional radar coverage is insufficient for gliding threats that rely on thermals and visual hunting. We're recommending tethered early warning balloons and acoustic triangulation be reinstated at select highland bases. Mobile response units should train for engagements lasting no longer than 20 minutes. After that, the window closes. These entities observe. They adjust. By the second pass, they will have accounted for your range, your blind spots, and your hesitation.
He closed with something I haven't stopped thinking about.
This is not an enemy with ideology. It's not here to negotiate. It is the unknowable shape beneath the map of the known world. If we treat it like a threat, we can talk down, we will lose.
That's where we are now, between the second and third pass. They've watched how we respond. They've felt our weapons. They've survived our first push, and now they're moving differently. Slower, more deliberate. This isn't a flood, it's a cold expansion. And I think they're far from done. I'll play a recording in a few minutes from someone who witnessed a convoy disappear in Wyoming. They said it wasn't an ambush. It was something worse, like the land swallowed them whole. But before that, I'm going to read a list of roads that are no longer safe. These come from verified local sources. People who saw the aftermath, not secondhand rumors. Do not take Interstate 80 across central Nevada. Do not approach Interstate 90 between Billings and Rapid City. Do not attempt to drive north through the Siskiyou Mountains. Multiple passes have been blocked by landslides or abandoned vehicles. In some cases, the blockages are deliberate, military road denial operations. If you approach them, turn around. Do not wait. Do not assume they're temporary. And if you're anywhere near a dam, a hydroelectric station, or any high-pressure water infrastructure, move uphill. I can't stress this enough. There have been 3 failures in the last week that haven't made it into any official channel. The structures weren't sabotaged. They were compromised from below. These creatures are following water routes, maybe for hunting, maybe for migration, or maybe because they remember the rivers better than we do. The most recent one happened 2 nights ago, outside Glen Canyon. I didn't catch it through any broadcast because no broadcast went out. I got a call instead, direct line. The voice was quiet and full of grit. Not the kind of fear you hear from someone watching a horror unfold in real time, but the tired, resigned kind. He identified himself as Cody Haskins, a hydropower technician who stayed behind at the auxiliary turbine station after most of the plant was evacuated last week. Said he wanted to make sure the last bank of generators didn't spin out if something came through the spillway. What he saw wasn't a flood. It was worse.
Glen Canyon project. Stayed on with a 2-man crew after they called it. Didn't want to walk away and leave the rest of it running blind. You ever stand inside one of those dam access corridors? Big metal ribs curving overhead. Concrete so thick it eats sound. You can feel your own breath against the back of your tongue. We used to joke that if the earth cracked open, the turbines would still be spinning, just humming along in the dark.
He paused then. I remember the way the air in my studio seemed to drop a few degrees, even though nothing had changed. I didn't interrupt. I let him keep talking.
I was running a diagnostics check on the intake screen alarms when the ground shook. Not hard, not like an earthquake. Just this pressure wave like the floor sagged for half a second. Nothing in the system flagged it, but I felt it. I went to check the south vent access, near the lower sluiceway. There was water on the ground. But it wasn't leak water, it was thick, full of silt, clay, not where it should have been. And then I heard the bolts shear.
He said it didn't come through the front gate. It came through the base. Something punched up from below, slow at first, then violently. He described hearing the sound of something scraping through concrete in waves. Not all at once, but in long, grinding spirals. Then came the collapse. Not catastrophic, but targeted. Enough to buckle the foundation, just enough to shut the turbines down permanently. By the time he got back to the main deck, his partner was gone. The flood indicators were glowing red, and the river channel had shifted by several feet. Something had carved through it, like a burrower. Something that didn't mind pressure or stone. I asked him if he saw it. He said no, not clearly. Just the water churning like a body had passed through it just beneath the surface. And then a tail, gray, armored, and trailing something like seaweed, rising and vanishing downstream.
I got out with the truck. Didn't check back. Didn't try to reach anyone. I drove until I stopped seeing floodlights. Then I found a ridge and parked. I still got fuel. Still got a battery pack. I'll keep the signal open, but I'm not going back down there.
That's the last I heard from Cody. No confirmation from the Bureau of Reclamation, no formal report, no mention on any national band. But I've heard similar tremors registered out of Hoover and Lower Granite. These things are finding the oldest infrastructure and using it as entry points, not to sabotage, but to move, unimpeded, unnoticed. Now I want to play a full recorded conversation that came in this morning. A woman named Deborah McKay called from Eastern Washington. She used to be a transportation engineer. Retired 2 years ago, lives alone on a ridge above Snake River. She's got backup solar, 2 landline patches, and enough food to sit tight for another few weeks. But that's not why she called. She called because she saw something happen to a military convoy near her property, and she couldn't explain it.
This is Deborah. I'm out here above Asotin Creek, just south of the old access road that leads toward Clarkston. I saw the trucks roll through 4 days ago. 14, maybe 15 in total. Mostly transports, some armored. Looked like a National Guard element, maybe Idaho reassignments. No insignia I could make out. They stopped briefly near the transmission station and then headed east. I didn't think much of it. 2 nights later, I woke up to a thump. Not an explosion, not thunder, just this hard weight hitting the earth. I walked outside and stood on my back deck. Nothing moved, no lights, no sirens, just the dark and the sound of shifting wind. Then I saw the flashes. They weren't gunfire flashes, more like heat blooms, soft pulses of orange like magnesium burning underwater. I heard metal twisting, rubber popping. Someone screamed. It carried for a long time, and then it stopped. In the morning, I hiked up to the high ridge with my field scope, looked down into the basin. Every single vehicle was on its side or burned out. Some still had doors open, treads half buried. No sign of a firefight. No shell casings I could see. And no bodies. I don't know what did it. I don't know why they didn't radio for help. I just know that whatever got them didn't want to be seen.
I asked her if she stayed on that ridge long. She said no. Said the birds weren't making noise, and when the birds go silent, she goes too. I know it's hard to imagine this scale. The idea that full military units can just vanish without a trace. But it's not like in the movies. There's no dramatic scene, no desperate last stand. Just power going out, radios falling silent, tracks leading nowhere. It's not war, it's erasure. We keep talking about these creatures like they're a single category, but I don't think that's right anymore. I think what we're seeing is a range, from small to massive, from slow to fast, from territorial to migratory. Some burrow, some swim, some fly. Some just move forward in straight lines, not changing direction for anything. There's no single enemy here, there's a reshaping, and no terrain is safe. I got a handwritten letter this morning, no return address. Just a plastic-wrapped envelope left at the supply drop spot behind the station. Inside was a copy of a military terrain overlay, hand-drawn. Contour lines marked in pencil, movement routes sketched in red grease pencil. At the bottom, scrawled in block letters,
They are not invading, they are returning. Don't hold the ridges, don't defend the rivers, don't fortify open plains. They already remember where they've been.
I don't know who left it. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe it was just someone trying to leave a record. Either way, I believe it. Because I've seen the patterns. The places where motion sensors stopped working. The same flight routes, darkening in sequence across different states. These creatures aren't chaotic. They're following something we can't yet see. But not all of them are following quietly anymore. Until now, most of the reports I've played back or summarized were about observation. Animals moving through forests, shadowed shapes seen at dusk, abandoned vehicles, strange footprints, missing people. But the last 48 hours have been different. We're past the point of passivity. I've received 8 different accounts from 8 different locations, all describing open aggression. Not confusion, not defense. Targeted action. Something's changed. First was the situation in Missouri. Outside Columbia, near a National Guard supply depot, something walked through a commercial farming district and didn't stop for fences or roads. It crushed 4 storage barns before approaching a grain tower that had been converted for water purification after the local main line ruptured. A drone from the city's emergency response unit caught part of it on video. What looked like a massive, upright animal with a cranial crest and thick muscle mass in its tail and shoulders. Several people compared it to a Dinosaur, but with no feathering. It didn't run. It didn't roar. It walked toward the tower, knocked it down, and left. No feeding, no sign of panic, just deliberate destruction. And then the footage cuts out. Right after the base of the tower cracks and the structure rolls sideways like it was made of plastic. That same night in northern Alabama, a power substation caught fire. Initial response blamed a heat surge from failing grid connections. But a second report from a lineman team that arrived 3 hours later paints a different picture. One of the transformers had been torn clean off its foundation. Bolts sheared, housing punctured. No explosive residue. Just force. As if something had tested the box for current. Not by accident, but by contact. One of the responders, a man named Donnie Price, left a voice note on his old backup phone and mailed the memory card to his niece in Kentucky. She uploaded it through a community repeater before it went down.
I'm standing here looking at a thing I can't make sense of. The steel's twisted, and there's these drag lines about 2 feet apart across the gravel, like something squatted next to the box and just listened. There's scorch marks, but not from an arc, more like friction burns. And this smell, like burnt copper mixed with rotten bark. Whatever was here, it knew what it was touching. It left fast. Too fast.
The thing I keep hearing from people who have seen them up close, if you can even call what they're seeing them, is this sense of timing. These creatures don't waste motion. They don't linger. And when they do act, it's almost mechanical in how direct they are. You can't read it the way you'd read an animal or even a hostile person. You just watch something old making a decision that you're not built to understand. Now, about those different events I mentioned, there's one I've been holding back. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because it's disturbing. Not in a horror movie way. In a this is real way. I got a voice transmission from a guy named Julian Torres. Lives near a marina outside Savannah, Georgia. Said he and his sister were staying in a dry dock sailboat after fleeing a nearby town. No power grid, no running water, just a gravity-fed tank and propane. They thought they'd found a quiet place to wait things out, but 4 nights ago at around 3 a.m, they heard the sound of wet impacts, something slapping against the underside of the hull, like waves, but too regular. Then the sound of heavy wood shifting, creaking. Not from the wind, from weight. Julian went to check. When he opened the hatch, he saw what he described as a wet mass retreating down the sand berm, long tail dragging a groove, head low to the ground, jaws too wide for the body. Not tall, not agile, just thick, covered in what he said looked like moss but wasn't.
I didn't see eyes, just movement, and these marks on the hull, these scratches that weren't deep but were placed. Not random, not like something brushed by, like it tapped the boat. 3 marks, side by side.
His sister didn't sleep after that. The next night she left a piece of fish on the ground to see what would happen. Gone in the morning. No tracks, no scat, nothing. They left the marina the next day. I asked him why he waited until now to report it. He said he didn't want to admit what scared him the most, that it had approached the boat without sound. That something that heavy, that slow-looking, could still be quiet. And that it might have just been watching them for a while before making itself known. We've been expecting aggression to look like attacks. Teeth, claws, chases through cornfields. But this might be something worse. Curiosity. These creatures are exploring us in the same way we're trying to understand them. But where we send drones and field teams, they send mass and proximity. They test how we react to presence. And when we don't react fast enough, they make adjustments. Let me shift to another call, this one from the Pacific Northwest. Woman named Tara from the outskirts of Eugene. She and her 2 teenage kids had been sheltering in the basement of a small co-op farm for over a week. No major sightings, no threats. Then 2 days ago, a nearby ridge was flattened. Not a landslide, just gone. Trees crushed in a flat line like something had rolled over the slope. No noise, just the forest. Missing by dawn. She left a long message. I'll read a section of it here.
We heard the ground shift. Thought it was a small quake. Then the neighbor's cows started screaming. Not running, just frozen. Neck high in their pens, making a noise I've never heard come out of an animal. Then the lights popped. Not because of a storm, because something shook the buried lines. My daughter ran to the door, opened it a crack, and we saw it. Just the tail, really. Moving through the brush, slow and wide, like something that didn't need to rush. We didn't stay long, packed the van and left before the sun came up. There's no fighting something that big. You just stay ahead of it.
It wasn't just Oregon. Washington State reported multiple Firewatch towers going dark yesterday, unresponsive. Those towers are supposed to have redundant power and manual radio backup. One of them, north of Yakima, sent a short emergency ping before cutting out. Just 5 words.
It doesn't care about fire.
I've said before that this isn't a war in the traditional sense, but the casualties are real. The damage is growing. And some of these creatures don't walk around things anymore. They go through them. Last night was the first time I truly didn't think I'd wake up. I had just powered down the transmitter for battery conservation, stepped outside to reset the antenna alignment, and heard what I thought was a landslide. A soft rumble at first, like gravel shifting, then a low-frequency tremor that hit me in the chest before I even saw what caused it. I crouched, went still, looked down the slope toward the tree line, and there it was. Massive, bipedal, heavy-bodied, moving at a slow, deliberate pace straight up the ridge. I didn't see scales. I didn't see feathers. The body was wrapped in something that looked like broken bark or stone, textured, uneven, layered with years of sediment. Each footstep drove shallow cracks into the earth. It was breathing through its jaw, not its snout. You could hear the exhale in the soil. It wasn't charging, it wasn't roaring. But it wasn't blind. Its head turned with intent. The direction it faced was the station. Not the tower. Not the antenna. My building. It didn't need scent. It had memory. I backed through the rear door, killed all lights, and sat in the inner corridor with the steel cabinet door propped against the only exposed window. For 43 minutes, the structure creaked with pressure, and I heard the faint scrape of claws, or maybe just weighted toes, pressing into concrete out front. It never forced entry, but it stayed, just outside, long enough to let me know it had been here, long enough to leave a trench in the gravel that ran straight up to my front step and curved away as if bored. That's what it's come to now. They aren't retreating. They're circling, testing. Their behavior has shifted, and the incidents are accelerating. I'm no longer reporting fringe sightings or outlier attacks. I'm reporting the breakdown of human-held territory. Here's what we know now, as of this last full transmission. Fargo has gone dark. Last working relay went offline 8 hours ago. No evacuation alert ever came through, but shortwave chatter from surrounding counties describes screaming, overturned grain trucks, and large-scale movement along the river routes. Similar reports came from parts of Iowa, Sioux City, Storm Lake, and rural zones along the Little Sioux River. Locals said they heard the sound of cornfields being flattened in waves, followed by silence. When the wind dies down out there, you can hear destruction coming from miles away, which makes it worse, knowing it's coming, knowing you can't stop it. Denver's eastern suburbs are under rolling brownouts. I spoke with someone from Arapahoe who said a convoy was attacked near the junction of Interstate 70 and Pena Boulevard. Not by one creature, but by a group, not hunting, herding. The description didn't match anything we've seen before, 4-legged, but with rear legs that extended unnaturally far, allowing them to leap in bursts. He said the first one came down from an overpass and landed on the roof of a Humvee without making a sound. Not loud, not fast, just sudden, followed by 3 more low to the ground spreading out. Like a coordinated ambush. He tried to get a picture, but his phone went dark. Not out of battery, just dead. He said the screen blacked out the moment the first animal moved in. No power surge, just a void. And that's something I keep hearing. Devices failing in their presence. Phones, drones, cameras. It's not always electromagnetic. Sometimes it's heat. Sometimes it's vibration. One person described their laptop getting damp inside its casing, even though the air was dry. Another said their flashlight wouldn't stay on when pointed at a certain clearing. Like light itself didn't want to reveal what was inside. I got a message on tape. Recorded yesterday afternoon by a woman who fled the outskirts of Sacramento. She didn't leave her name, just said this.
They don't break down the door. They don't knock. They just wait on the other side. You'll hear breathing or the creak of a branch. But when you open it, nothing. It's not curiosity, it's patience. They've had millions of years to learn it.
I'm playing it now because it's not just a survivor's fear talking. I think she's right. These creatures don't have to outnumber us. They don't have to overpower us in a blitz. They can just wait. Press into the corners of our map until the lights go out. Until the food runs dry. Until we start turning on each other for room to sleep, for a patch of silence. Reports from parts of northern Montana say that entire stretches of road are being left untouched, not because they're safe, but because people have learned not to move. A family barricaded inside a closed hardware store reported hearing one of the smaller two-legged creatures, a lean, raptor-like type, pass the storefront 3 separate times in one night. No attacks. But each time it slowed. It tested the glass with a tap, not a slam, just enough to let them know it knew. The next morning, they found the entire side of the store covered in claw marks, straight lines, not random scratches, a pattern, maybe a signal, maybe a territorial mark, maybe nothing we'll ever understand. I've tried to stay objective, tried to remain clear, steady, but I'm not blind to what's coming. These aren't isolated attacks anymore. They're sequences, spaced, methodical, spreading from coast to interior, south to north. As if pushing us into corners, and we're running out of corners. Everywhere I tune in, I hear the same 2 things: questions and silence. People asking where the safe zones are, whether the Midwest is still passable, whether the Rockies can be used as cover, whether Alaska has been overrun, and then, moments later, just silence. Frequencies that used to hum with crosstalk now return nothing but static or weak loopbacks. You can almost hear the shape of emptiness now, and when the signal drops, it doesn't fade. It cuts. Clean. Like something closing a door. Earlier this evening, I got one last call. I didn't catch his name, but he sounded young. Mid-20s, maybe. Said he was part of a drone recovery crew near the southern border of Utah. National Guard. Said they were trying to pull flight data from a downed recon drone that had last transmitted from above Bryce Canyon. They didn't make it. Something intercepted them halfway. Not a flying creature, not a burrower. Something that came through the rock, not around it. Through it. He described hearing what sounded like a drill, then a vibration so strong it knocked out their vehicle's suspension. Thing didn't even stop to look at us, he said. It just moved, like a moving cliff. Whatever it touched fell apart. Not because it smashed it, because it disassembled it by weight, like erosion happening all at once. He ended his message with a single line. One I won't forget. We've never been the top species, just the one that forgot what else was here. I don't know how much longer I can stay on the air. The auxiliary battery is reading low, and the sky hasn't cleared enough for full solar collection. I've still got the hand crank, but the signal gets patchy under low voltage. If I cut out, don't assume I'm gone. I'll be here as long as I can, talking, listening, recording. And you, wherever you are, keep surviving. Keep writing. Keep passing stories on. Because at the end of this, memory might be the only thing we're allowed to keep.